Okay, so chapter 17 is one of my favorite chapters because the endocrine system, well, one of the things about the endocrine system, remember, there are two systems that are going to control the body, and one of those was the nervous system, and now we've got this one coming up, which is the endocrine system. I'm trying to see one of our models. Okay. All right, here we go. All right, so endocrine system. You've all heard of this, right? Okay, and I've mentioned it quite a few times because if these are the two systems that are going to control the body, do you guys remember when we were looking at the halves of the brain and how I kept trying to point out the little W that kind of forms here at the base? And then, of course, this right here, our pituitary gland, okay? Now, think about this, all right? This area, which is primitive portion of the brain, to this little gland right here, gets to do that. Our adrenal gland. Guys, remember those for the kidneys? Okay. Thyroid. Everybody's familiar with that? Okay. Pancreas, pituitary, ovary, testicles, thymus, parts of the brain. What I'm trying to get to, this little area that has that pituitary gland gets to affect something almost throughout the entire body. And some of these chemicals, because that's what they are chemicals. And this time, they're going to be chemical messengers. Up to this point, with the nervous system, we have depended on neurotransmitters, little chemicals from those nerve endings. We're still going to see that, but that's going to take place in that area of the hypothalamus and a part of the pituitary gland. The rest of it is going to be chemicals that are released from this pituitary gland. So they're termed chemical messengers. This system, we're going to find glands as well as tissues that are going to secrete hormones. And that's the name for these chemical messengers, is hormones. We're going to see that it's composed of endocrine glands, and the study is called endocrinology. That's a huge area of science. You may hear people say something such as, I have to go see my endocrinologist. If they have something, maybe like diabetes, all right, or other issues that might come along with that adrenal gland and so forth. This system, it's going to be a way to communicate cell to cell, as well as through the release of these chemicals to their target tissues. For example, the adrenal gland. or the thyroid, or the pain, whatever the case might be. They're going to try to make their way through the blood to their target tissue. So that's how they want to travel. That's how they're going to travel. So when it becomes time to communicate cell to cell, in some cases, we're going to be dependent on gap junctions. Do you all remember those when you were talking about cell-to-cell connections and a gap junction that was present? Okay. We can deal with neurotransmitters. Like I said, in the brain, at that area of the hypothalamus, we are going to have connections with neurons. But then it's going to be up to this pituitary gland to release a chemical. We're going to find that in the body we can have paracrines. This is really an ability for one cell to talk to another, because this would actually be a cell releasing a chemical to tell the cells around it something's going on. So that is truly cell-to-cell communication. So these little hormones, like I keep saying, they're going to be chemical messengers, and they are, for the most part, going to travel in the bloodstream. When we talk about these chemical messengers, and we hear endocrine system, endo means what? Inside. These are chemicals that stay in the body. They don't leave it. Now, we do have exocrine glands, and yes, their products can go outside the body. And here's the thing about some of the organs of the endocrine system: they're going to play an endocrine and exocrine function. If it's exocrine, there's a duct involved. For example, the pancreas. What does the pancreas do? Alex?
Makes insulin.
All right, we know that as it produces insulin. That's what we think of. Yes, it does. Does it do anything else? Now, insulin would actually be released from a cell of the pancreas into the bloodstream. But what else does the pancreas do? It produces digestive enzymes that leave by way of a duct to make their way to the intestinal system. So therefore it is endocrine and exocrine. The goal, the job, what the endocrine does is these organs of the endocrine system move their products to the bloodstream. The organs, the pituitary gland, the organs themselves, we're going to find, are all highly vascularized. They have a very good blood supply. Like I was saying, some are both endocrine and exocrine, like the pancreas. Now the liver, oh boy. The liver plays a part in definitely several systems. they classify it as being part of GI. But now we know it's part of the endocrine. It's part of the blood. To say what the liver does for sure, we know a lot of what it does. We can't really say it belongs solely to one system because it doesn't. Okay? The liver is so busy, it's really boggling to the mind to know everything it does. Now, one of the things that you're going to see in your textbook, there is a list of hormones. They're going to have little abbreviations that go with them. Like, for example, growth hormone. Growth hormone, you'll see it listed as GH. Luteinizing hormone, LH. Okay? Look over that table and be familiar with those names and their abbreviations. But when we look at the endocrine system, these are the parts that we associate with the endocrine system. Like I was saying, in the brain, do you guys remember the pineal gland? Okay, they count that here. Now, my hypothalamus, all right, and then that pituitary gland. Couple of things I want you to note. First of all, this relationship to very primitive regions of the brain. And then the stalk, how it basically looks like it's hanging from that part of the brain. Yes, sort of, okay, but this is going to also be the routes that are present. Now, when I say routes, okay, that means a route that will connect either the anterior or the posterior pituitary to the hypothalamus. Okay, it's really cool. And then if we look at the glands, our thyroid gland, the thymus gland, adrenal glands, pancreas, my parathyroid glands, and then my gonads, the ovaries and the testes. These are the ones that we consider the, I guess we could say, the organs of the endocrine system. One of the things that I've mentioned several times, the two systems that will control the body, the nervous system, the endocrine system. If we think back to what we know at this point in time, nervous system, things work kind of quick, okay? We know that with the nervous, and now we're going to find out with the endocrine, both are used for internal communication, meaning they're working to maintain homeostasis, because we're going to find that's what these chemicals do. They're going to work to maintain homeostasis. Even though these two systems control the body, they are complementary to each other. We're going to find that the nervous system will help control the release or no release of the chemicals, and the chemicals will affect what happens with the nerves communicating to let them be released or not released. It's like this little cycle that exists. They can have the same effects on the same organ. So think, for example, my adrenal gland.